This is episode 21. Welcome, fellow anglers, to the Good Karma Sport Fishing Podcast. I am Captain Ryan Van Fleet, your host here in the Florida Keys. Each week, I bring you fishing tips, stories, gear reviews, and more to help you maximize your fishing trip, catch big fish, and overall have fun. So way back when I was first starting out, I left the dock that morning with a group of 3 super nice folks from Vermont that were down for the NASCAR race in Homestead. The group I had were all about going big game fishing beyond the reef that day. Now, I'd been watching the weather like a hawk 3 to 4 days prior to the charter, as I always do with every charter, and the forecast looked very doable. However, now when I went to bed that night, that 15-knot north wind, 2 to 4 foot sea forecast was something completely different when I woke up in the morning. Now, let's just say that the weatherman was completely off. When I get calls from clients in the winter months, and I tell them the Patch Reefs are offering some great fishing and lots of immediate action. Patch Reef fishing is a good option for days when it's just too unsafe to fish outside the reef or just darn right uncomfortable, meaning that the seas are kicked up, the current is ripping against the wind, just so many different variables to make for an uncomfortable situation for people that just aren't used to fishing in the ocean. Heck, I don't like to fish out there when it's rough like that. It's just not fun. Now, typically, my first response from the client is, what is a patch reef? And then, what can we catch? So in this podcast, I thought I would share some insight on patch reef fishing. Now, some of you can probably apply or relate to the same thoughts where you live, as it's just another name for shallow water reef fishing. So what is patch reef fishing? Now, patch reef fishing is a local Florida Keys fisherman term for fishing the shallow reefs and rock piles inside the barrier reef down here in depths of water between 10 to 40 foot. Now, if you visit the Keys enough, you're going to hear a fisherman say, eventually, we hit the patches today, meaning we fish the shallow reefs. In the cooler months, fishing on the patch reefs is at its peak, especially between the months of December and February. The big coral heads, smaller reefs, rock piles, and shallow wrecks in these shallow depths inside the barrier reef will hold numerous mutton snappers, groupers, cirro mackerels, barracudas, jacks, mangrove snappers, hogfish, porgies, cobias, sharks, and more. The list is endless. Best yet, we get to use ultralight spinning gear, similar to panfish and walleye rods, to catch these fish, making it the ultimate in light tackle fishing. Freaking fun fishing. We can catch lots of fish, numerous species, and maybe catch a few for the fryer. Now, I always try to get you a couple big snappers on the patch reefs using some of my trade secret techniques. Getting back to my story. At the time, I had no spray shields on my boat. And when the wind blows from the north, you can get pretty darn wet in a center console running out to the reef, as the spray catches you from the side. Not so fun. When I reached the barrier reef, I was met with a big wind against a tidal swell. It was totally unfishable, and the seas were just darn right confused. I was extremely frustrated. My clients were soaked and cold. I was just flustered as what to do next. As I was getting ready to pull the plug on the day, I turned to my clients and apologized about the weather. Thankfully, they understood. I said, let's just head back to the dock, and if you guys want to grab some dry clothes at your hotel, we can try something else this afternoon when it warms up a bit. Now, I also gave them the chance to cancel out for the day and told them I would only bill them for the morning. They wanted to go. They wanted to go with the plan B and give me a chance on the second half of the day. I was very appreciative that they did that. So I said we'd go patch reef fishing. We'd only go, I said, we'll go a couple miles from the shore. I got a few spots. Little did they know I was freaking out at the top of my mind as I had absolutely 0 spots to fish. But I did not want to tell them that. I had my fingers crossed, and I said some prayers that I would figure it out between the time they left the dock to the time they came back, which was only an hour or two, if I remember right. Now, today's angler is very lucky to have excellent satellite imagery. They have tools available to them, such as Google Earth, which makes it easy to scout out new spots and try from the comfort of their home. One note of caution, for us down here, unfortunately, Irma shook things up a bit on the ocean floor, so it may not be 100% reliable. So this past summer, I purchased the Atlas Track. I talk about Atlas Track in episode 12. And during the fall on windy days, I spent some time scouting in the comfort of my desk chair on my computer, looking for some new Patch Reef spots using the Atlas Track satellite imagery tool. Now, if you can afford to do so, I would recommend purchasing an Atlas Track. But if not, use Google Earth. This is not a paid promotion. I just really do like the Atlas Track and use it. Now, here's a little tip for those that don't already know this. When you put in some time scouting on the computer with Google Earth, use the time slider to your advantage. Scroll back through the time slider and look for scans that Google Earth completed on days when it was nice for fishing, and look for boats fishing or lobstering on the satellite imagery. You may find a decent spot to try out. Also, there are a ton of videos out there on ways to use Google Earth to find new fishing spots. Now, another Patch Reef windy day advantage that Good Karma has over all other boats is we have a new seakeeper. There's only one or two boats down here that are larger boats that have a seakeeper, but we are, as far as I know, we're still the only smaller boat in the country that has a seakeeper too. It basically shuts down the 15-knot gusty days on the Patch Reefs into crazy comfortable fun for my clients now. We have the advantage over all the other boats, both big and small, without a seakeeper. Fishing the patches now feels like fishing from a dock. Not to mention, we get to and from the spot with ease in the gusty breeze as the seakeeper works wonder while underway. My clients are left speechless at the end of the day, just amazed. You got to try it out, especially if you like light tackle casting. The patches are crazy fun now more than ever with the seakeeper. So as I mentioned, guys, I was just starting out, and I didn't have very many GPS spots. As I didn't steal any from the captains that I worked for, or anything like that. nor did anybody hand me any spots. So all the spots that I have are spots that I had found on my own. So I had a guy give me a couple spots once, but that's another story for another time. So, as luck would have it, I had actually one Patch Reef spot in my GPS. And I had found this spot coming in from an offshore dolphin trip the summer prior. I actually happened to stop, and for some reason, I don't remember why I stopped, but maybe because the water was so nice, I wanted to take a look at the bottom and see all the fish swimming below. So, anyways, I saved this spot. And, I said, hey, I'll come back to it on the windy day. So I did. It was that afternoon I went back to that spot. So the client showed back up in the afternoon. I said, hey, I got a spot. It was still blowing pretty good from the north, but very doable. I brought my light tackle rods, and I bought 15 dozen live shrimp from the tackle shop. Thankfully, the clients were dry and ready for round two. I made a joke. I said, yeah, we might get a little wet going to the spot, but at least it's not snow. I still use that comment on days when we get sprayed. So I took them, a couple miles from the marina to the Patch Reef spot. I said some prayers and then put the chum in the water and waited. Well, we crushed them that afternoon. I caught mutton snappers up to 15 pounds and several other species. The people were just happy. The fish were biting so hard that we blew through 15 dozen shrimp in less than 3 hours. The clients were ecstatic. They had an awesome time casting the light tackle rods and hooking the fish. They actually came back to fish with me the next 2 years straight. We had a great time, and thank God I spent the time on that one nice summer day to find that patch reef spot close to the marina. Now, even though the trip turned out great, I never wanted to be put in that position again. So in conjunction with finding spots while on the water, I also spend time scouting from home. You can never have too many fishing spots, especially when it comes to the patch reefs. Now, if you book with me for a winter trip and it's too windy to fish outside the reef, and I think the conditions are right for hitting the patches, I may give you this option rather than cancel. Now, if you don't want to go, that's up to you, but I tell you, you're going to be missing out on some great light tackle fishing. I have so much more to talk about when it comes to fishing the patch reefs, but I'm going to save it for a future podcast. In fact, I'll probably have a couple different podcasts about the patch reefs. Topics are going to include some secrets for anchoring, the gear I use, bait, and chumming for them big mutton snappers. I'm going to share some trade secrets, so stay tuned. Now, I hope you like my thoughts and tips for the week on patch reef fishing, aka shallow reef fishing. And you can use Google Earth or Atlas Track to help you find some new spots. And as always, please let me know if you have any questions. You can email me at goodkarmaryan@gmail.com. Now, I'm going to be doing a question and answer podcast, so definitely email me. You can also find me on Facebook at Good Karma Fishing Charters, Instagram at goodkarmasportfishing_FL_keys, and please also share this podcast with a fellow angler and check out my website, goodkarmasportfishing.com, and sign up for my monthly newsletter. I aim to provide you with fishing tips and information so you can make the best out of your time fishing. Thanks for listening, and remember, anytime you're fishing, it's all good.